I'm a big believer in destiny.
Mm.
So I had this terrible blushing problem when I was 17, and it was that Tony Robbins tape set that I was talking about a minute ago, the 6 tapes that it literally changed me overnight. I just listened to them all. I'd just left home. I listened to them all and I didn't blush anymore.
Hey there, how's it going? This is James Tripp with a video for James Tripp on YouTube. I want to share here with you a clip from a longer conversation that recently went out on the Agents of Everything podcast. I'm in conversation with the phenomenal James Lavers. In 2008, this man saved my life. My business was going under in the global financial crisis of that year, and his mentoring, his ideas, his coaching, it turned everything around for me. So I'm eternally grateful. In the longer conversation, we're talking about financial freedom and self-expression, but we're talking about so much more than that. We get into how to handle criticism, the existential angst of elevator pitches, how you create forward creativity, how you keep your individuality and personal expression within a marketplace that may be demanding something else from you. So all of this is in the mix here. In this little clip, we are talking about destiny and serendipity, and of course we're touching on the topic of how Tony Robbins cured James's blushing, which set up a line of destiny that unfolded for James. Okay, let's dive into this. If you want to listen to the full podcast, go to Substack and look for Agents of Everything, and of course, make sure you subscribe there.
I'm a big believer in destiny.
Mm.
So I had this terrible blushing problem when I was 17, and it was that Tony Robbins tape set that I was talking about a minute ago, the 6 tapes that it literally changed me overnight. I just listened to them all. I'd just left home. I listened to them all and I didn't blush anymore. I can get fancy about it, but it was that simple. And I remember after that happened, the big thing that occurred to me, James, was I'd love to do something for him. I'd love to be in a situation where he's saying thank you to me one day, not from an ego place, like, oh, thank you, but just like, it would be really cool to return the favor. And that just stuck in my mind. It stayed. I didn't write it down. It just stayed in my mind and it just grew. But then whatever it was, 6, 9 years later, when I got to work with him on telly, it happened. Like it came true. My dream came true. So I'm a planner. If you call that planning, I don't think of that as planning. I just think of that as dreaming, but it not being like a wild fantasy dream. It being one of those, man, I've literally spent my life trying to define what that is. But it's that kind of dream that is just, seems ridiculous, but it will not go away. And it just stays earnestly within you as like, no, that's what's going to happen. I never did mantras about it. I never drew pictures about it. I never did vision boards about it. I got nothing against that stuff, but I know that that came true because it was a dream in my heart, you know?
Right, yeah.
So I do that kind of planning. And then the rest is pretty close to your description. It's like this mic arrived yesterday, right? I bought this mic yesterday because I'm doing a bit more video work myself. And it's a cheap thing from China. Is it perfect? No. Is it really good for the job I've got it for? Yeah, it's really good. Like I'm really happy with this product. I've been raving about it to my wife. I've been going, oh my God, darling, this was like 30 quid and look what it does. And she's like going, okay, darling, I'm really happy for you. But I'm a fan of that. Like when you said about difference, like that's made a difference. It's a 30 quid product from China, but like it's absolutely perfect for me. So I think you're onto something there. This whole idea of difference, it's like, just do that video. Go on, just do that video. There's that thing you want to say, maybe. Go on, give it a crack. Like, don't worry. Just do it as if there's one person who's like, who really needs this today. And if there's one person that needs it today, there's a really strong likelihood that there's 1 million people that need it today, you know? So yeah, I like that definition of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, like oftentimes it's just getting moving, it's doing a thing. Something that's left a lasting mark on me, it was a line from Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And it was in the afterword of the 10th anniversary edition of The Black Swan. And he says in it, like, people have complained that I've like analyzed complexity and all of this, but I haven't given anyone any advice on how to deal with complexity, right? And he says, it's not my job. I'm not like a self-help guy, but if I was to do so, it would be this: expose yourself to serendipity, leverage the upsides and mitigate the downsides. And I love that. That to me is just brilliant. So a lot of the time,
beautiful.
you've got to make that serendipity. And nobody makes serendipity by just sort of sitting in their space, like with a vision board or with, there's no serendipity being made. But if you go, I got something to say, right? Instead of overanalyzing it, just go, right, boom, there it is. It goes out in the world. Somebody hears it. We're having a conversation right now. This conversation is happening because I posted a short video in response to something I'd seen somebody else post on Facebook. And because the way I think about things is like, oh, I've got an idea in my head right now, and it might be worth something. It might be worth nothing, but it might be worth something. It's worth nothing if it stays in my head. So I'll just put it on that little bit of video and I'll chuck it out on a few social media platforms. It takes only not that long to do, particularly these days. There's so much good stuff available that makes this sort of thing easy. And then there's a little, there's ripples in the serendipity pond. So there's an exposure to serendipity. And then, well, look, there's James Lavers. He's popped up. He's made a comment on there. And now we're having this conversation. And, what else might unfold from this in the future? Who knows?
Maybe that is planning. Maybe we have this weird sense about what planning is. It's like, well, a plan needs to be it's written down and it's well stated. But my sense is that, certainly based upon what you're saying, and this is sort of coming to me now, but perhaps that's answering a plan that has been there. Like, for example, when you say like, oh, well, there's something you want to share. Well, for you to even have the slightest inkling that you might share it, there's probably been something going on. Like there's probably, do you know what I mean? And just because you're not aware of that, there may have been a structure to this serendipity, but there might be a structure and you might call that a plan. You might, and it might not follow how you're supposed to do planning. But I've always gone very much with, I don't think it's intuition, but I've gone very much with like what I'm feeling. Again, when you were talking earlier about how do I describe myself, it's like, I always think, well, if you ask somebody, like, I don't know, if you ask Madonna how she would describe herself, would she just go, well, I'm just a pop singer, I'm a pop singer. I don't know, because there's a woman who has worn so many different, she's explored so many different themes in so many different voices with so much different personality over the years.
Yeah.
And you just go, that's got to be led by something. And I trust whatever's leading it. So I like to think about creativity in a similar way as like you get different albums from a different artist. And so I trust the albums that are coming in. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I got an album around this side now. Okay, well, this is where we're going. Is it on brand? No. Is it likely going to ruin your brand? It could well do, but I'm being led in this way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I often refer to this as what's in your heart.
Okay, well, this is where we're going. Is it on brand? No. Is it likely going to ruin your brand? It could well do, but I'm being led in this way.
I think you're right. I often refer to this as what's in your heart. And I think, I tell you what, one of the things that's coming up is Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, which you may have read. And he makes
I haven't
that point
read it, and I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
There's not really, you can go and watch his TED talk on it really, and you'll get the meat of it. But there's this kind of idea that your why is something that you can't really put into words, and you probably don't even know really fully what it is. It's almost like a sense, an impulse. It's something to be tuned into more than something to be explicitly stated or written up or anything like that. But I know for me, I get a sense, obviously there's a direction of travel for me. And it isn't always because I sat there and I consciously chose it. I sometimes feel like the universe is going, here's what you're doing. Here's what you're here to do, And sometimes I don't even like that, but the universe is still saying, no, here's what you're here to do. But I get what you're saying about a plan. I do think having a sort of direction of travel, a kind of intentionality, a sense that there's good things on the horizon and you're contributing towards bringing them into being. I mentioned I work with the military vets, and a lot of them have had like kind of latent PTSD bubbling in the background for a long time, but it's not a big deal. And I've noticed, and it doesn't become a big deal. I always say to people, why now? And it's usually when they've lost their direction in life. where they've lost their, they've lost a sense that there's something on the horizon that they're moving towards. That's when all sorts of other problems seem to come up for people. But when they've got that something on the horizon, and it doesn't have to be a well-formed outcome or a smart goal or anything like that. It's just a sense of like, yeah, over there, and moving towards that. So there's this crazy Russian mystic called Vadim Zeland. And he's a sort of a law of attraction-y kind of ish guy, but quite a pragmatic one as well. He's kind of semi-mystical, semi-practical, right? Half and half. But he's got this line, and he talks about having a goal slide, right? And I really like that metaphor of a slide, like an old school slide you project through. Because for me, when I have something like on a slide and it's up, and it's like a transparency in front of everything in the world, then I can immediately see what resonates with the slide and what doesn't, right? And I don't have to hold it there consciously. It's like you said, if you need to return to it, it's probably not real for you. But you can see what aligns with the slide and what doesn't. So you just do more of what aligns with the slide.
That's lovely. Yeah.
I love that. And his kind of mantra, one of his lines is, keep your slide in mind and put one foot in front of the other towards the goal.
Nice.
And I just love the simplicity of that. It's not always clear where the next step's going to be. And it might be that the universe presents you something, it aligns with the slide. You go, yeah, I'll do a bit more of that right now.